The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Pray for you every day. Bless you. So good to see you. Good morning. How are you?
Find yourself out.
Yeah, thank you. I've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health.
We begin with some breaking news. The Vatican has announced the death of Pope Francis at the age of 88. In a video statement, the Vatican said he passed away at his residence in Casa Santa Marta, next to St. Peter's Basilica. Now, the Pope, recently hospitalized with double pneumonia, appeared in public just yesterday for Easter Sunday at St. Peter's Square.
Well, I'm joined now on the programme by our correspondent in Rome, Seema Gupta. Seema, of course, I know you've been following this throughout his stay in hospital over the last few weeks and months. Nevertheless, a real shock, isn't it?
Yes, a complete shock.
So he also met, didn't he, with the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, and a lot of what you're talking about there, very much in conflict with some of the views and opinions that J.D. Vance has been expressing over the last few months since he came to power with the Trump administration.
Yes, I mean, one could, in some ways, in terms of policy and viewpoints, perhaps look at the Pope and other Vatican officials as being critical of the Trump administration. So there will be a period of mourning, and it's after that eventually there will be a call for all the cardinals to come to the Vatican, all the cardinals that will be able to vote in a conclave. Those are the cardinals that are under the age of 80, and they will stay in and be under lock and key, if you like. They will have no contact with the outside world. And then they have to decide and vote to see who will be the next pope.
My feeling is that an era is over. This conclave will happen in these next 3, 4, 5 weeks in a very delicate international situation, which is more dangerous than any previous time since World War II. And so one of the questions will be, what kind of pope this church needs to stop this world to go over to the abyss.
With the health of Pope Francis deteriorating over recent years, conversations have already been had about who might lead the Catholic Church. A number of names have been put forward as possible candidates to become the next pontiff.
The conclave is a stunning spectacle watched by Catholics around the world that will ultimately decide the new leader of the church. But already there have been some cardinals who are clear frontrunners. Cardinal Pietro Parolin is considered by many the most likely to be elected. He's been the Vatican's Secretary of State since 2013, a close papal confidant. He's considered a moderate figure within the church. Born in Scavone, Italy, he's become an expert on Middle East affairs. Whoever is chosen, one thing is already certain: a new chapter in the rich history of the Catholic Church is about to be written.
There's no let up. This has been quite the last 4 or 5 months, really since the election of Donald Trump in early November, just a few months ago. And now we've got a new era, not just in the Catholic Church, but for the whole world. You heard one of them in the cold open there say that, we need a pope for this church that can prevent this world from plunging into the abyss. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show. You can get to the live video stream of this program at trumpetdaily.com or at the Rumble channel, rumble.com/Trumpet Daily. So I was telling my wife this morning, no let up, as I just said there. You have a busy day of travel. You take some time out to enjoy a Thunder game. And then this. Here we are, Monday morning. We're off and running. And over the next few weeks, I guess they lay the dead body of Francis in the basilica for the next 8 or 9 days. People can pay their respects. And then within the next 3-4 weeks, you've got the conclave. You've got all of these cardinals under the age of 80 from all over the world gathering at the Vatican to select the next pope. And this is a pope that is taking us into a new era. It's pretty amazing. I guess it happened at 7:35 this morning. His last official meeting, as you saw there, was with the Vice President of the United States, as it happens, J.D. Vance. And you heard there in some of the commentary how that Donald Trump somehow is connected to this story, this development. How much time will it be before they blame Trump for the Pope's death? Certainly that won't happen, but you can see it factoring into the next Pope that's selected. We've got to have a strong Pope. I mean, this could be the one that's prophesied. This could be, we've talked about Germany's strongman. What about the Vatican strongman? That's prophesied as well. We had an article posted just this morning. Simon Zekich, he said, the Bible prophesies of a rising superpower in Europe, ridden by a woman, a symbol of a church. You can see all this in Revelation 17, and there was a time not that long ago when some of the better commentaries understood what this was referring to. They understood what the woman in Revelation 17 refers to. So much of that truth, though, has been blotted out. This woman will be led by a particularly powerful, strong man as Pope. Pope Francis has played a major role in helping develop this coming European empire. However, Trumpet editor-in-chief Gerald Fleury writes for our latest print edition, I believe the changing time we live in will require a different Pope. It says Pope Francis doesn't quite fit the picture. He's talking, by the way, about an article that's in our latest Trumpet magazine right here. This is the May-June issue of the Trumpet. Will Donald Trump's peace plans fly? You see the dove there on the cover. I mean, as I've been saying over and again on this show, all the ambassadors for peace, they're saying we're going to have peace. We're going to have safety. We're going to have prosperity. And your Bible says that when they all declare that, look out, because sudden destruction is coming. The article that's referenced in what I just quoted there, a new era requires a new pope. A new era. We're entering into a new era, and you heard it there on the cold open. It requires a new pope. I mean, if the Pope's handlers were Trumpet subscribers, this was probably the surest indication that his death was near. I mean, in some ways, it's not surprising. He was 88. He had been in the hospital since February with double pneumonia. So the world is shocked, but not necessarily surprised. Shocked because it's a new time. It's a new era. This was, as I say, the May-June issue of the Trumpet magazine. As I say, when you just kind of step back and look at the bigger picture from these past 5-6 months, it's pretty incredible. Again, tomorrow's news today. If you're following the Trumpet, there was an article that we had in the January issue of Royal Vision, how Donald Trump's victory changes our work. A new era with the emergence of Trump, or the reemergence of Jeroboam. A new era, how it changes our work. There's an article in this issue, this is January, earlier this year. The rise and fall of the Catholic Church is prophesied. The rise and fall of the Catholic Church. I'll give you some quotes from this article in just a second. But here again, if you're a subscriber to God's literature, God's truth, these magazines, the Trumpet magazine, or going to the Trumpet website or the Royal Vision magazine, then you're clued in. I mean, you're receiving tomorrow's headlines today. How many weeks ago was this particular issue prepared? and I got the the first copy of it just a few days ago. It's about to land into mailboxes. How timely. Here it was prepared weeks ago, perhaps months ago in some cases for these articles. And it lands in mailboxes this week. A new era requires a new pope. And you know, it's interesting too. It's drawing a lot of attention to the Easter weekend. And as Jack Posobiec said, Easter coincided this time around on the Roman calendar with Passover as well. I mean, they're talking on the right, on the MAGA right, about a revival of Christianity. And they're talking about this in Europe as well. And you know why? Because more and more young people are becoming religious. They see that we're entering into a new era. We need some tradition. We need some conservative traditions to be resurrected in the Catholic Church. We've had enough of these woke policies. We've had enough of the woke pope. And you just look at history, and a lot of times when you go from the more progressive, liberal-minded pope, and he dies or he passes from the scene, then the tendency is to swing over to the other side. Someone more conservative, someone more of a traditionalist, drawing attention to Easter, to religion. There was a Drudge headline yesterday. He lives, next to the picture of the Pope. He gave his final Easter service just yesterday. He lives. And there was Francis going through St. Peter's Square in his wheelchair. And now the headline is that Pope Francis has died. And I'll just refer you again to the headline in the latest Trumpet. A new era requires a new pope. Let me just take you back to the Key of David that aired on November 29th. This was my father commenting some on the re-election of Donald Trump. But as those of us around him know, I mean, as soon as Trump was reelected, I mean, he could have focused on that for months because we had been talking about it happening for years. And instead, my father said, okay, Trump's back in. Now we got to watch Europe. Now we've got to watch for the Holy Roman Empire. It's an empire. It's a holy one. Not by God's standards. By God's standards, it's very unholy. And that's not a stretch, even when you look at history. You can read all about this in our booklet, The Holy Roman Empire in Prophecy. That booklet covers quite a lot of history as well. And so much of it is not so good. It's not so good. You look at what Revelation 17 prophesies. I mean, these are sobering times. He lives, it said yesterday. And now he's dead, and we're entering into a new era. This is my father from November, a few months ago, clip 4.
Germany's coalition government collapsed on November the 5th. On that same day, Mr. Trump won the presidential election. It is interesting that those events happened on the same day. Is it coincidence, or is there a lot more to it? This collapse shocked Germany and Europe, and if everybody really understood Bible prophecy, it would be shocking them as well. It is that dramatic and something that is crucial to a lot of events that are unfolding before our eyes. It is bad news, but it's leading us into the greatest news you could ever even imagine. It's that outstanding.
That's my father from November. He talked about the collapse of the German government and said how that there's a strong man prophesied to come on the scene from Germany, and how that these prophecies are accelerating. And what makes this so significant, the death of Pope Francis, is what Herbert Armstrong said about how the Vatican will factor into the emergence of this empire headed up by its emperor. This is Herbert Armstrong from 1980. He said that the challenge of creating a United States of Europe is so great that, quote, the politicians cannot do this by themselves. Only with the collaboration of the Pope can they do it. And so with a new Pope, no doubt one from Europe and one that's very much more conservative than the woke Pope we had for the last few years, he's going to factor into the acceleration of these prophecies. As I say, that, well, you can even see that quote in the latest issue of the Trumpet magazine with the dove on the cover and so on. And then this is the booklet I mentioned just a moment ago. Make sure you call our operators today. If you don't have the Holy Roman Empire in prophecy, call our operators, 1-866-930-3024. But just to plug the magazines again, I mean, if you're not subscribing to the Trumpet, you're missing out on tomorrow's headlines. You're missing out. In 1954, Mr. Armstrong said this: Germany inevitably will emerge as the leader of a united Europe. It will require some spiritual binding force to inspire this confidence, to remove these fears. And that spiritual binding force must arise from inside Europe. This is the woman, again, a type of a church. The woman straddling the beast. It needs this binding spiritual force for the strong man to appear. And I mean, we've already seen all these other headlines with Germany going ahead, building its military, putting hundreds of billions of dollars toward that, and the whole world basically saying, yeah, that's fine, go for it. And as I keep saying, what happens when Germany and Europe, this empire, has its strongman, its emperor? That emperor to oppose the bad orange man, Donald Trump, Orange Hitler. We need it. We need a strong pope, and we need a strong man to head up the European empire to oppose Donald Trump. Everything's falling into place. This again is my father from November, clip 5.
The collapse of Germany's government will lead to a dramatic change for Germany and Europe and the whole world. There's going to be a strong leader that comes on the scene to lead this European Union, which will become the Holy Roman Empire with 10 kings, and he will rule over all of them. That is the Bible prophecy that we need to understand. And I think that could happen in just weeks, certainly in a few months.
And well, a few months later, we don't yet see the strong man, but we do see a new era for the Vatican, for the woman, for the church, for the papacy. This article from the January Royal Vision, this one that had Donald Trump on the cover, about this signaling a change even in God's work. We wrote there, this is Brad McDonald, we're about to see a massive Roman Catholic revival in Germany, in Europe, and around the world. Bible prophecy makes this clear. A revival in the Roman Catholic Church? We were sifting through clips this morning, and there's all kinds of commentators talking about this, what we wrote about 5 months ago. A revival. I mean, there were times in recent years, you know all the statistics, where the popularity among Christian religion, it was just plummeting. And now it's beginning to turn around. I'll give you the receipts on it in just a second here. You heard it here first. Tomorrow's news today. Current trends in Europe may look the opposite, but you could say the same 4 years ago about a different prophecy. In 2021, Donald Trump looked politically dead. The presidential election was stolen from him, and an imposter was in the White House. Yet the PCG Pastor General Gerald Fleury said Mr. Trump would return to power because of prophecy. 4 years later, that forecast was proven correct. The sure word of Bible prophecy. Nothing could be more sure or certain than God's truth, than God's word. God cannot lie, the scriptures tell us. Now, human beings can certainly misinterpret certain prophecies and teachings. In fact, you've got all kinds of interpretations respecting the truth of the Bible, the teachings, the doctrines, the law of God, and certainly on prophecy. But as I said earlier, there was a time, you go back into the 1800s and you look at some of the old commentaries from back then, like Lang's commentary, and you see there was a general understanding of, oh, well, this is talking about an empire in Europe, and the woman straddling it is a great false church. I mean, it's obvious. It should be. It should be obvious. You've got people, commentators, talking heads, talking about war. We're close to World War III, and we need a strong pope. We need a conservative traditionalist. We need a strong Germany. Germany needs a strong military. And well, what has happened with that sort of development historically? We said at Royal Vision, we need to watch Europe with the same faith and Bible prophecy. Right now, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and Germany look weak. The church is suffering real tensions and schisms, especially in Germany, where hundreds of thousands have officially left in recent years, yet prophecy is clear that the Holy Roman Empire will rise again, dominated by the Vatican and Germany. And what we're seeing is exactly that. It's happening. It's happening, and it's happening fast. It's accelerating. There's no let up. Listen to this. Mr. McDonald says, the Sabbath after Mr. Trump's historic election victory, Mr. Fleury gave a sermon about it. Interestingly, he spent little time talking about the election and how he had forecast such a comeback for years. He focused on Europe, Germany, and the coming Holy Roman Empire. It says, you're about to see that prophecy fulfilled just as surely as you saw Mr. Trump's return. We got to be ready. We better brace ourselves for what's coming. He wrote here, if the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church is not on your radar, you need to put it there. You need to put it on your radar. That was the January Royal Vision. You see the cover right there. You need to put this on your radar. That's tomorrow's news today. That's God's perspective. It says many people in the West see this institution as a spent force, but it's about to bounce back in a dramatic way. It's talking about the Vatican. It is about to bounce back in a dramatic way. More war, this time the war over the next pope. You see just how thoroughly human this institution is, whether it's the office of papacy or the Vatican, what goes on there, or the church itself, the Roman Catholic Church. It's just a human organization. I mean, you listen to some of these Catholics on TV talk about it. Steve Bannon and Jack Posobiec earlier today. And I mean, they didn't like Pope Francis. I mean, J.D. Vance went and paid his respects and said there that he prays for him every day, or did. But the policies of these two clashed. Francis, Vance, Trump. You see, every time that this happens, you see how thoroughly political this so-called religious institution really is. I mean, cardinals gathering into a conclave, voting for the next pope. And then this next pope is supposed to be in the place of Jesus Christ. As Herbert Armstrong said so many years ago, and again, this is brought out in the Holy Roman Empire in prophecy, it's a government. It's an empire. I mean, the Vatican is its own state within a state. It's also clear. Listen to this this is, I believe, November 9th. So again, this is my father giving a sermon just, 4 days after Donald Trump shocked the world and returned to office. And of course, many of us were assembling before my father at that service, expecting to hear everything about Trump and the fact that it's prophecy fulfilled and how that we've said for 4 years that he was coming back. Instead, we heard a lot about Europe. We heard a lot about the coming strongman. out of Europe. This is clip 6.
Now, Satan has power as well as God does, but he doesn't even come close to God's power, of course. But anyhow, on Wednesday evening, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz had a dispute with Finance Minister Christian Lindner, who demanded some drastic budgetary cuts. As a result, Scholz fired Lindner and thus broke with his coalition partner, the FDP. Now, you have to keep in mind that Satan, it says in Revelation 12, verse 12, says that he's full of wrath, is worth wrath, because he knows his time is short. He knows there's very little time left. And we need to know that as well, and know it not a lot better. Now, this is in the context of the seething pot. It's going on at the same time as the Holy Roman Empire is seething, and it certainly seems to me it's seething a lot more since the day after Trump was won his campaign.
The seething pot, that's a prophecy from Jeremiah 1. Again, it pertains to Europe primarily. It's boiling over. I mentioned the January Royal Vision. The January Trumpet, that too had Donald Trump on the cover. There's an article in there, after Trump's victory, watch Germany. And look at what we've been covering on this show since that time. As I say, if you're not subscribed to these publications, you're missing out. You're not getting some insights. Of course, you can get to all of these at the Trumpet website as well. But you're not getting to those insights, those prophetic insights that tell us what's happening, why it's happening, and what's going to happen next. It's electrifying, really. After Trump's victory, watch Germany. Mr. McDonald, in that other piece, said, here we will examine one prophecy that underscores that message. It describes an event that no one is expecting now, but that will soon become a towering development in world affairs. That's about the religious revival that we're about to see, that we are seeing in the Vatican, in Europe. The May-June issue, this again, the one with the dove on the cover. My father says this, it talked about how that Francis, who had been ill, not doing well, he's been in the hospital since February, but my father drew attention to a couple of falls that he had. He fell down on December 7 and January 16. This is all in this article. And as my father has noted before, you can see this in our booklet on January 16, the Miracle Day. But as my father has explained, those dates are significant. December 7, of course, is when the Philadelphia Church of God started. And January 16 is the anniversary of Herbert Armstrong's death. And we've often talked about that 40-day period. And my father suggests that, the fact that he fell on both those dates was probably God giving us some indication of what's coming. And here we are today. Here we are, April 21. And there's a new era in the Catholic Church. There's a new era for Europe. There's a new era that the whole world is entering into. It says on February 14, my father writes, Pope Francis was admitted to the hospital. Many thought his battle with double pneumonia would be his last. Then he was discharged five weeks later. My father says this, the fact that this health crisis was preceded by a fall on December 7 and followed by one on January 16 may prove significant. All this is written before we learned of his death this morning. He talks about those two dates spanning 40 days. It says here, a new era in world history has begun. Now you're hearing it in all these news clips. You're hearing the talking heads talk about the new era. And it's in the latest Trumpet. printed weeks ago, prepared weeks ago, months ago. It's pretty amazing. We are entering into the worst suffering in history. It will be extremely violent and thankfully short. It should not catch you off guard. Now, this is the part that the commentators are leaving out. They don't see this. I mean, they're talking about we're close to World War III and the whole world is rearming and Germany needs its military to defend itself. They're saying all these things while at the same time saying that we're going to see peace. If we just get a right-wing conservative strongman in Germany and the Vatican, it solves everything. We need Trumps all over the place. And then peace will spread. My father, however, he says, I believe the changing time we live in will require a different pope. Pope Francis doesn't quite fit the picture. There you go. Tomorrow's news today. Tomorrow's headlines today. Prophecy tells us we should expect a strong leader to arise in Germany. Europe's most powerful country is facing many pressures right now. This nation needs much stronger leadership, referring to Germany. Prophecy, of course, says that they're about to get it. And it says here, the Vatican will help bring that political leader on the scene. And that is when we will really see the fireworks. Here's where we are. The fireworks are about to go off. A few weeks from now, we're going to be talking on this program about the new pope. Prophecy says the Vatican will become very powerful and instigate radical changes. Europe knows that to survive the trouble in today's world, the continent must come together and act as one. It has taken many steps to do so, but significant obstacles always arise. How much different do you suppose the thinking of these cardinals is right now, 5 or 6 months after Donald Trump's return? What if Pope Francis died 5 or 6 months before Donald Trump returned? Those cardinals are going into the conclave with a different mindset. But now, I mean, it's all things Trump. Trump's the most powerful man in the world. And we need a stronger, more powerful Vatican. We need a stronger, more powerful Pope. We need a strong man in Germany. We need a strong Europe. We need a strong European empire. And they're about to get all those things. It says here, Europe knows that to survive the trouble in today's world, the continent must come together and act as one. It's taken many steps to do so, but significant obstacles always arise. And then he goes on to give those quotes that I already gave to you from Mr. Armstrong, talking about how that it needs that spiritual binding force. It needs this great universal church. 1.4 billion congregants worldwide. That's massive. It needs the power of this woman straddling the beast. For the beast to come together. You know all about the prophecy of iron and miry clay. It takes a strong binding spiritual force to bring it together, to unify the continent, the empire. The seventh and final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. My father says in the latest Trumpet, this same article, the church-state union began with the imperial restoration of AD 554 and has repeatedly dominated Europe through the centuries, right up to the Hitler-Mussolini access in World War II. I mean, that brings it right up to our time today. So don't fool yourself thinking that religion is on the wane. Don't fool yourself thinking that, well, people they're fleeing from this universal church. It says here, the seventh and final revival of this empire is prophesied to rise in our day. It says this modern day Holy Roman Empire is again a church-state alliance, actually an empire guided by a religious power. And then he takes you through step by step. Revelation 17, what the Bible prophesies, this great false church that sits upon many nations, that straddles the beast. My father says here, we need to watch for the rise of a political strongman to guide this empire And just as important, we need to watch for the rise of the Catholic Church's influence over it. Wow. That's the latest trumpet. Tomorrow's news today. Most likely, we will see a church leader installed on the papal throne who knows the German system and will help install the political leader who can really swing Europe around. A good, strong believer of the church's doctrines. A conservative, more traditionalist, perhaps German swing for the papacy. That's what we can anticipate. That's what we're looking for. Or at least someone that certainly understands the German system and the need for a strong man in Germany to lead the way. Look for the Vatican to exercise more influence and power, not less, but more, as we see that seventh and final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. It says here, finally, at some point, the mother church will abandon its efforts to woo her daughters. Well, this just talks about the church unity. I mean, you've got the good Protestants like, Joe Scarborough and Mika. They're just raving about Francis. And then you've got the others like Bannon and Passot. All of them, they're Catholic, but all of them just clamoring for a conservative, a MAGA supporter. That's what they want. Listen to what my father said in conclusion. He says, you might find it difficult to believe the Roman Catholic Church could be involved in anything so cruel as what the Bible describes, but study into the history of this institution, history it has tried to discredit and bury, and you will learn the cold, hard facts. Here again, so much of it is right here in this booklet. All of this history. It's disturbing. You'll get the cold, hard facts. It's just like I said on Friday's program. History repeats itself. We think we've fashioned and formed some kind of a new man that's quite unlike the people of Athens or Rome or Germany in the 1930s and 40s. No, the same. In fact, the Bible says it's going to be worse, even worse than the worst atrocities committed by human beings. And that's what we've got to prepare ourselves for. And there's no reason, like my father says, there's no reason we should be surprised by any of this. Look at what God did to bring Jeroboam back. And then that happens, and my father immediately takes us to the next developments that we can look for, that we can anticipate, that we can prepare for. Read the Holy Roman Empire in prophecy. He says, this church has never repented of its violent, evil, unparalleled past. God forewarns us all. We must heed, lest we find ourselves caught in the worst of these prophesied events. So God is pleading with his family, most of all, his Laodicean brethren, to get back on track, to get back right with God. In that same May issue, we've even got, I think this is within my father's article, this little sidebar piece about who will be next. Who's the next pope? So as I say, you're missing out if you're not subscribing. All of this prepared many weeks ago. And now it's in the latest Trumpet mag. How timely is the latest Trumpet mag? We've seen this happen over and again over the last several years in particular. We write about something, we comment on something before anyone even gives any thought to look at it. And then next thing you know, it's making headlines all over the world. Tomorrow's news today, in that sidebar piece, it says that one commentator in Germany gave two possible candidates, both Italian. Pietro Parolin, he's the one that I think is kind of like the chief of staff inside the papacy. And then Pier Battista Pizzabella, my personal favorite. If you're going to select a pope based on the name alone, you've got to go with Pier Battista Pizzabella. I got into the Spanish accent last week. This is, I guess, the best I can do with Italian. But that Pizzabella has to be the greatest Italian name since Rocky Balboa. in my mind, it's no contest. He should win based on his name. The only drawback about becoming the Pope is he'd have to change his glorious name to something boring like Pius or John or maybe Francis II. Maybe he'll break with tradition. If the conclave is listening, Pizza Bella is your choice based on my preference for the baby name challenge that we have every other year in Epistles of Paul. Maybe Pizza Bella will break with tradition and not change his name. Pope Pizza Bella. It's perfect. Back to more serious points. All of this, Josue Michels, he wrote this article. You've got some insights into these two, but it could be someone else. But I think we have a pretty good idea of what kind of individual this will be. It's all laid out in the May-June trumpet, for sure. It's all there, as I say, tomorrow's news today. And so what you see now, as I said earlier, is you've got this kind of war between the conservatives and the progressives, and many commentators saying that, you know, with Francis, it's pretty much been a woke pope. It's been a progressive pope. And now what happens? Listen to this from Fox News, clip 3.
There will be a lot of wagers as to who should succeed him. And I would just offer one thought in this. There is going to be a lot of pressure to bring the church back to Italy. There's going to be a lot of pressure to elect the next pope as an Italian. And the reason I mention that, Carly, is because I covered John Paul II, I've covered Francis, and Benedict's resignation as well. And there's always a debate as to the weight of the Italian aspect of the Catholic Church. And if you think about it, Pope John Paul II from Poland, 1978, I think he was elected. So you went a good 45 years plus where you had a pope from Poland, and you had a pope from Germany, and you had a pope from Argentina. Where will the next pope come from?
No, what he's saying there is the pressure is on to select someone not from, Latin America, but someone from Europe. And the two in Mr. Michels' piece, they're both Italian, as I just mentioned there. But listen to this take from France 24, clip 16.
Well, so in as much as this is, of course, a day of mourning for hundreds of millions of Catholics, there's also a very fierce debate already underway about what comes next. And it goes beyond a lot of the social issues that we've just been hearing about, abortion, gay rights, and so on. Perhaps the most divisive issue of all is migration. Francis was a very vocal and passionate defender of migrants, and it put him directly at odds with, of course, the Trump administration, but also in Europe, where you had a number of bishops come out and say, he's a woke president. Don't give us another woke president. I'm sorry, not President Pope. It was a woke pope. You can really see online the debate about, please don't appoint another woke pope. And a number of the bishops in Europe sort of coming out and saying, migration is going to erode the Catholic nature of Europe. So I think this is going to be a major issue going forward.
Open borders, you see, that's an issue in Europe, just like it is here in the United States. This is going to factor in, according to this take from France 24. But she also notes there just how progressive or how woke Francis was, and how that the tendency, again, is to swing hard to the right. Speaking of his wokeness, listen to MSNBC, or I guess this is just NBC, talking about how liberal-minded this particular pope was, Pope Francis. Move ahead to clip 9.
That connection with the faithful would become a hallmark of his pontificate, as would his plain-spoken manner.
Chi sono io per giudicarla?
On the papal plane leaving Rio, Pope Francis said, "Who am I to judge?" when asked about a gay priest. God has a father's heart, he tells the boy. The same could be said of Pope Francis. And one measure of Pope Francis's humility is where he actually lived. Traditionally, popes have lived at the Apostolic Palace. That is a very grand residence inside the Vatican. Not Francis. He chose to live at the Casa Santa Marta, which is a much more modest guest house. And he said the reason for that was he didn't want to live in isolated grandeur. He wanted to be close to the people.
There you go. He forsook the ways of this world. As he invited in the world, homosexuality, gay marriage, etc. Who am I to judge? I'm just the pope of one of the biggest religions in the world, supposedly based on the Bible. Francis said in his Easter address yesterday, "Love has triumphed over hatred, light over darkness, and truth over falsehood. Forgiveness has triumphed over revenge." This is his take on the world today. He says, well, evil hasn't disappeared entirely. It'll remain until the end, but it no longer has the upper hand. That's what he said yesterday. Evil no longer has the upper hand. Well, I submit to you that it does have the upper hand because the God of this world is still on his throne, Satan the devil. And he's deceived the whole world. And we see hatred and evil and strife all over the place. It doesn't mean that there isn't a hopeful message in the Bible. There certainly is. That hope is in Jesus Christ and his return. That hope is in the resurrection from the dead. That hope is in all of mankind, all of humanity, finally having their minds open to the truth of the true gospel. This world is dying. This world's on life support. This is a dark and evil world. And yet that's not the one that was described yesterday. Yesterday, the Pope said, love has triumphed over hatred. Love is winning. Peace is winning. Peace and stability, security, prosperity. It's winning. So said the Pope on Easter. Listen to Joe and Mika. I mean, they loved Pope Francis. They loved the woke Pope. Clip 8.
When failing health led to rumors of retirement, the Pope, who once ministered to the poor in the slums of Buenos Aires, said simply, leave a legacy of good, not just goods, as he had done himself, washing the feet of prison inmates, embracing the sick, and shining a light on the Catholic mission of love and mercy.
Wow, we have so much to talk about here in terms of the legacy of Pope Francis. Pope Francis, the things that stand out to me was first just living by example, the simplicity of his life, even when he could have the comforts around him of anything of his choosing. He chose to live so simply with a focus on the humanity of all people, even and especially the poor. Also, his focus on inclusivity, his outreach to marginalized communities. Those words, who am I to judge, will echo throughout his legacy.
This Pope would actually borrow from Jesus Christ in living that simple life. The Pope said, who am I to judge? Now, why in the world would he say something that radical? I don't know. Maybe it's because that's exactly what Jesus said to the woman at the well when religious leaders were going to stone her to death. And Jesus said, as they dropped their rocks after saying, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, Jesus turned and said, where are your accusers now? Well, I also don't accuse you. Go and sin no more. And that's the thing, Mika. His legacy was remarkable in that Jesus reached out to those who were shunned by religious leaders in society. And with Francis, conservatives, many conservatives inside the church hated him for being Christ-like in that respect. Just as the religious leaders of his day hated Jesus.
Underlying the rave reviews of this papacy there on Morning Meltdown is the fact that whoever succeeds him has to be thoroughly, completely politicized. I mean, he's got to be a left-wing political operative. He's got to be an activist. Because if you are, well, you're just like Jesus. You are just like Jesus. Meanwhile, you've got all the conservatives saying, we don't need another woke pope. We need a MAGA pope. We need a conservative pope. Listen to Jack Posobiec on with Steve Bannon just earlier today. This is clip 7.
This Easter was one of the biggest Easters of our lifetimes. And why is that? Why is that? Because we are experiencing a traditional awakening within the Western church right now. And this came as a time where our Easter actually lined up on the Paschal calendar for once with our Eastern Orthodox brothers and sisters like my wife Tanya Tay. So what we need now is not a pope that inflames this growing schism within our church between the modernists and the traditionalists. It is the traditional rights of the church that see Gen Z flocking in, that see Gen Z becoming more religious than even millennials, potentially even more religious than baby boomers, that we're seeing in terms of church attendance. That is what's bringing people back, because this is a beacon and a lighthouse in a sea of rampant secular excesses.
And he's on to something there. Young people are returning to the pews. Young people, I mentioned this article. This is from USA Today, and it goes at the start here. It goes through the last 3 decades and how the church attendance has been in rapid decline. But then it says here, it looked almost inevitable that a crash was looming, but now something is shifting. Something is shifting, and we can see it in the data among Generation Z, those born between 1997 and 2012. You might remember the clip I played, or I think it was in an article. I read it to you. The 18-year-old girl in Germany that said, yeah, I've been pacifist my whole upbringing, my whole life. I didn't want to see Germany militarize itself, certainly not because of our history. Because of what happened in World War II. But now I want it. Now I want a strong German military. We've got to oppose Trump. Overall, this is the USA Today, younger generations are more spiritually curious. Barna Research Group reports that most Gen Z teens are interested in learning more about Jesus, with younger cohorts leading the way in the growth of new commitments. Here again, you've got Francis's final address. He talks about peace and love winning out, and all this attention on Easter, this revival, it coincides with the Jewish Passover this year, said Posobiec. And then the next day, the Pope dies, and we enter into a new era, and the fighting begins. The war begins from the modernist left and the traditionalist right. We've got to politicize this. We've got to get a conservative voted in. As I said earlier, I mean, you see just how completely carnal and worldly this whole institution is. I mean, it has all the trappings of religiosity. But when you get right down to it, I mean, it's a bunch of men. They're not family men, by the way. They're not married. They don't have children. You can read what Paul said about that in 1 Timothy 4, but I'll leave that aside. But they get together and they vote. And if they don't get it on round 1, they vote again. And then some are eliminated and they vote a 3rd time, maybe a 4th time. Who knows? I mean, the conclave could go on for weeks. It's a worldly institution. It's a worldly government. And it's headed up by a human being, 100% a human being of this world. And what does the Bible say about this world? Quite unlike the Easter service yesterday, the Bible says that this world is evil. It's the present evil world. That's the Apostle Paul. I'm going to go with what Paul said. Galatians 1 and verse 4. Go read it. Go read 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 4. Read Revelation 12 and verse 9. Those are all New Testament verses. Jesus at his final Passover, he observed the Passover, the Christian Passover, and he prayed for God to protect us from the evil of this world, to protect us from the evil one, that would be Satan the devil. There's so much more we could get to. I have more, actually. But again, just to plug the magazines, especially the Trumpet magazine, so that you can receive tomorrow's news today. Call the 800 number, 1-866-930-3024. That's all we have time for on today's show. I've already taken you a little bit over, but I'm not going to charge you for that extra minute. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We thank you for joining us on today's show, and we'll see you again tomorrow.